Okay, hey everybody. Gonna be catching up on this one real quick. Got Bane for you tonight. Held off a little bit for technical issues due to the fact that Facebook was holding me off a little bit. But we're here now, so I tried to do this a little earlier in the day, but gonna hammer it out real quick and try to get this one going. It should be interesting. I haven't drawn Bane in probably, oh, good lord, 15 years, 16 years, maybe. I mean, Batman actually had his back broken the last time I drew this guy. Um, I remember that that cover where he had him snapped over, and that was just mind blowing to me to see that, to see such a strong character. I mean, Superman's Dead didn't impress me as much as Batman being broken. That Nightfall series was something else. Um, Night Quest didn't impress me, unfortunately, but I loved the Nightfall series. I just really enjoy drawing heavy duty villains, and I don't know why I didn't draw this one sooner. It's weird to me. I was sitting there thinking about it while I was laying it out, and it just didn't. I don't know. I guess he just didn't come to mind prior. But I was going through some comics this morning, and I came across that issue, and I was just like, yeah, I got to draw him today. I wanted to draw the Grifter originally, but it just didn't work out. I tried on 3 different attempts, and it just didn't pan out. So I was like, this is not the one for me today. But normally on Sunday, I take it really easy, and they just come to me, But not this time, that Grifter card fought me and fought me and fought me, and I was like, okay, cool. It's just not meant to be today, and I'll leave it alone. But that's unfortunate because I like that character too. But yeah, it is what it is, and it is what it isn't because it isn't here. So got stuff falling off the board over here I had to catch. Um, yeah, I just think he's an interesting character all his own, and everybody thinks he was big and stupid because the Schumacher film made him into an idiot. It made him into a big brute, and that's not what Bane was. Bane was very intense. He was an extreme crime boss, and he'd been a pain in the butt behind the scenes. That's a technical term, by the way, for Batman for years, and nobody realized that he was involved. And a lot of people thought that he was a myth in the DC universe for a long time by the way they portrayed him. And then you had him come out and say that he was going to destroy Batman once and for all because Batman was taking down his business. And as a one-man army, he was dismantling it. And it made a challenge to his force, his underlings and all of that, and it lost position and lost face with him, so he had to take care of it. And that's when he personally hunted down Batman, found out who he was, and ended up breaking him. And if you've never read that series, you definitely want to check that out. A lot of artists that I know that are younger guys in their 20s or so, a lot of you guys may not have read those books, and you can go to like Barnes and Noble or online and get them in collected trades and graphic novels and stuff like that. But I wouldn't go hunting them down issue by issue because that would be a little hectic. But yeah, you can go online and get the trades for sure. I think Comixology has them in a collection as well, but who knows? Anyway, I just highly recommend checking that out if you've never read it before. Where the premiere of uh, Azrael, which takes over for Batman when he's broken, he fills in for him, and that's where uh, Dick Grayson and uh, let's see, Dick Grayson, and I'm not sure, it wasn't Jason Todd. I think it was the Tim Drake Robin, both panhandled for the Batman suit and lost due to Jean Paul, which was Azrael. And for some reason, Bruce Wayne said he's going to be more vicious and he'll be better suited for the Batman position while I'm gone. And he healed up, and only to come back and find out, that Azrael had taken over, and that he became Asbats. And boy, that was a different situation altogether. That was one of my favorite Batman runs ever. The book was beautiful. The series it was Batman going at his best, round and round and round by every rogue gallery villain that he had, and Bane was sending them to see if they could stop Batman first, kind of a bet, and then he would go first, which he knew as a crime boss all he was doing was wearing Batman down by all these guys coming out. And it was just phenomenal the way it was written. Everything about that series was just great. And then when Night Quest came out, I was very disappointed, because that was a weird series for Bruce Wayne to come back into, and then all that, and they had to sort out all that mess and stop Jean Paul, and it was just crazy. But if you've never read it before, you should at least read it once through and through, because it is a phenomenal book all on its own. And then when you get it all together, it'll change your aspect and perspective of what these guys would go through if they were real, and then it'll change your perception of Batman and Bruce Wayne as characters in the books as well. So it's enlightening, very, very enlightening, because it gives a look at Bruce Wayne that he doesn't have to face before, because he's broken at that point. And they don't go all weird like the Superman's Dead thing did, because that book was beautifully done as well. That series was great. And then the Reign of Superman was just jacked up 10 ways from Sunday. So, again, I digress. That's a technical term. So, but, it's one of those things where some people just push it too far. And I think they should have left this with Night Quest and Nightfall. I think they should have left it where it was reining in Prime following for the longest time. And I mean, this was a long arc too. This thing was like 50 issues across the board, and it was in every Batman title and a lot of other stuff too. It crossed over into Robin. It crossed over into I think it crossed over into what was it? Batman, Superman. I think it crossed over into a couple of the others. I think it had a Green Lantern crossover at one point where stuff just got carried away, and it was cut across everything for a while there. I don't know if it crossed into any of the Justice League series. I know the Death of Superman did, but I don't know if Nightfall did or not. But it's just an amazing storyline, and it's still to this day one of my favorites. And that was a defining point between Dick Grayson and Tim Drake having it out to see who was the better fit for Batman and who was going to be, his successor. And when he had Dick filled in for him for a little bit, but then when Wayne came back, he decided, when he got his consciousness back after being beaten down, he actually came out and said that he wanted to recruit Jean-Paul as the character. So I was just like, man, that's nuts. It's crazy. It just was mind-blowing. But Nightfall was definitely a huge, and I think it was Jean-Pierre. I think his name was Jean-Pierre, not Jean-Paul. But it was such a huge storyline. It was hard to keep up with every little detail. And I just remember reading about it and seeing that cover back in, I think it was the Comics Buyer's Guide that had the special edition. I've got it on file here, but I don't know offhand. I think it was the Comic Buyer's Guide that had it back when they used to produce an actual magazine and cover different stuff coming out. And they had a big cover with a big card that came out with it, a giant oversized collector card that came with it in a plastic bag. And it had that cover showing Bane breaking Batman. And I was just floored when I saw it the first time. But it is what it is, that's back in the day when comic books would get in your face, and just really provoke a lot of thought. And that was the last reign of good superhero comics that really would get your attention in that way, through advertising and through media. They don't do that anymore, because it's a tell-all end-all generation now that goes in. You got to know the whole story behind it, or else you don't want to read it or whatever. And on demand, where you can read descriptions of everything and all that mess. It's just it's actually a little pitiful when you think about it. The market needs to lighten up a little bit and get back to the fun side of it, more than just throwing stuff out there to say, okay, watch this because you know what it's about now, and you got it right there, and you can read it. And, don't buy it or read it or fix it or anything beforehand. Just read the description and buy it, and it's just disappointing. You never used to know what was coming out. The store knew what was coming out due to the previews and the descriptions and whatnot. But the fans, we didn't really know a lot about it back in the 80s up until the early 90s, when they started releasing just everything to catch your attention. And it was supposed to boost sales, like the upcoming magazines, because magazines are the ones that started that mess of revealing what was coming up in the next coming issue, so you had all that detail on there and blah, blah, blah. And with the magazine market following suit, comics jumped right on, it was weird. But now they don't do that. They just reveal everything in a description, and you buy the comic book if that's what you want to buy. And there's an overview type of feel to it rather than a true comic book entertainment type of feel of where you pick it up and read the story. They pretty much just hand it to you on a silver platter. And that's a big disappointment in a lot of cases for a lot of people. I know it is for me. So, I don't enjoy knowing all of this stuff up front. I don't. I would prefer to be surprised. At least in the entertainment value of the comic book. I mean, Lord forbid, if I have a massive coronary or something, I'd like a little warning so I could go to the hospital, But all joking aside, though, it's one of those things you just have to accept. Hopefully comics are going to change. They're evolving right now, and we're going through a major upswing in digital comics that are fixing to start making changes in 2018, and the reason they're doing that is because of the fact that all the stuff that's going on right now, everything's changing with DC and Marvel, and then you have Image already on the bandwagon thanks to Todd McFarlane. You have him on the bandwagon already for all the digital books that they have as digital alternatives. So, I think there's going to be a digital upswing in consumerism for comic books digitally, and then I think that afterward there's going to be a secondary market for print-on-demand trades. And I've said since about 2003 I was talking about that, and I mentioned that in a couple of radio shows that I was on as an upcoming artist when I was younger in the mid 90s. They said, the big question was, where do you think comics are going, and what do you say to people in the future? Well, I'm telling you flat out, I think comics are going to go digital. When the internet came around and got so big, I was like, it may take a while for it to catch up with the technology, man, but if we have the same capacity and ability to run comic books like we do programs on disc and DVD and CD and all that, I was one of the people that was an advocate for that. I'm not saying I was the first, of course, because the technology already existed. So, I'm not saying I'm Al Gore and created the internet or anything stupid like that. It's just, what I'm saying is that, that marketing potential was there. And I used to talk about that all the time. And, friends used to tell me from the get-go, but as far back as 95, they were telling me flat out, digital comics will never make it. Digital comics will never make it. I've got to be able to touch the page and blah, blah, blah. And, and now that's pretty common. We have digital comics, and it's pretty common, and it's getting even more so, especially now with DC getting on board and Marvel pulling their own entertainment platform, which I guarantee you, I've said it 2 or 3 times now, I guarantee you this next year they're going to come out and it's going to be completely digital Marvel. You watch. They're going to switch over to that platform, and they're going to start charging for it, and they're going to pull it off of everything else. But that's okay. That's what they do. They do. That's the evolution of the business. And in all actuality, you'll still be able to get them for the trade, the trade collection, which is the way everybody collects nowadays anyway. If I buy a comic book as a monthly serial, it's very rare anymore because of the fact that I just don't see the market handling it the way they used to. If it goes completely digital, then production costs will go down. But the thing is, though, you still got to understand, you're still going to get a $3.99 comic book, okay? And I want this to be crystal clear with the people that are out there watching this and saying, I'm not paying $3.99 for a comic book. That means they'll be cheaper. That's great. In hindsight, it might be for you guys in the beginning, but it's not from a marketing perspective. I will always sell my comic books for $3 or $4. And I may have specials once in a while, but I'm going to tell you flat out, my comic books from Firestorm will always be $3.99, $4.99, right in there, maybe even $2.99 if need be. But the thing is, the reason for that you have to keep in mind, these publishers still have to pay for advertising because they're not getting ads sold in their comics anymore. Okay, they're not getting the print ads in the comics anymore, like Got Milk and all that mess. So you have to consider the foundation changing as well. So you're going to have to pay a higher price and a higher premium and still pay that $3.99 for your comic book because of the fact that they have to pay the overhead of printing costs. Because see, everybody makes the mistake of, the comic book, it's just a guy that sits down and draw it, and they watch people like me, that come in and just draw, and they watch guys like Jim Lee just kick these things out. But what they don't realize is that's our livelihood, in most cases. And we still have more people to pay than just us. It's not a guy sitting down and drawing a comic book. It's the writer, the editor. The editor is up front to decide what books go out. Then you have, the writer on the front end of that. Then you have to, once you have a script, you have the artist coming in and breaking it down as a penciler. And so there's an inking position, no matter if the same guy does it or not. And then you have a colorist, and then you have a letterer, and then you have the final edit. to make sure everything's cool as it goes along, you know, in between each phase. So to come in and say, well, you know, well, you're just a guy drawing a comic book, there shouldn't be any problem. If there's a guy doing 5 jobs in that position and he's the solo act for his comic book, he should get just as much money as the guys doing it as 5 positions. You got to think about that. You got to think about that. There's a reality to it. You need to check, you know. We as creators have to be away from our families quite a bit to make these books happen for you guys, because this is weeks and months of our lives setting this stuff up. And people don't understand, you know, well, I'm not paying $4 for a comic book. Yeah, I mean, there are people that don't buy print books because of the fact that they're so expensive in their mind. But what I'm telling you is it's not proper to think about that, because we have to put all of that labor involved. That's the reason newspapers have gone completely digital for the most part, because of the fact that a printed newspaper is cents on the dollar, yes, when you think about what's being printed, but you still have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for thousands and thousands of copies of that newspaper. Same thing with the comic books, and with the digital printing being better, because you guys want higher end products as a result. The printing's even more expensive. So don't go behind us and say, you know, well, I don't want a $4 comic book, but I want it to be on high gloss paper, and I want it to be, you know, on a decent paper instead of newsprint, and I want it to be in full color, and I don't want it to be black and white, and I want it to be this way, and I want it to be that way, but yet you don't want to pay for it and pay the $4 that we need to have that suitable. So, you know, consider what you're doing. We have a content production value, and it's not just a guy sitting down and kicking stuff out. It's a whole team. And then we've got to pay the editing process of advertising just to get it to you. And with the monopoly in the previews diamond world of print comics, and Comixology charging up to 33% right now on a new comic book, and they're talking about raising their prices up to 50% to distribute your comic book digitally, and they're not doing anything. So you think about that. They're taking up to anywhere from 33% all the way up to 50% of a digital comic book, which they did nothing to produce. And they're not advertising anything for you. They're just hosting it and cutting a chunk out of it. You're paying that percentage because they want to have an allowance because of their fan base. But they're not advertising for you. So you think about that one. Think about that one. So if you want to be in comics, be sure that you know what you're talking about, you know, as far as the production goes, and know your stuff, because you'll get put under a rock real quick and get overwhelmed. And if you're a fan, know how these guys have to live and how they have to eat, you know. We've got to take care of each other. And if you want to support the industry that you love so much, be sure to be willing to feed the market, you know, because if you're not, it won't be there forever. I mean, that's just the way it is. But anyway, enough of that. I'm almost done here. I'm going to carve in this chest real quick and get us moving along to finish Bane here. And then after this one, after this here, I'm not sure what I'm going to do tomorrow. I was thinking about something, like I said, with the Grifter earlier, but I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. But I'm going to add a couple of hairs in here because Bane was originally hairy. When he broke the bat, he had hair on him on occasion. Of course, I think that was I think it was Apiro that did a reboot appearance in that, but I'm not sure if he came back or not. There was 20 artists on that thing, and everybody did beautiful work, and it was just phenomenal the way it all came out. I think it was Jim that came back on that one. I'd have to look to see who all was on there, because it was so overwhelming at the time. I could never remember issue to issue what artist did it, unless I was just talking about it at the time. Okay, like I said, I'm gonna add a couple hairs here and there. It was sporadic at best, but but anyway, put in a little of this neck shadow here, so he can kind of look a little more three-dimensional, add a little depth to it. And then we'll call it a day for this Sunday evening. Time got away from me today. I was knocking out a bunch of cards and stuff, and getting the sketchbook ready, as well as drawing on some comics. And I'm very happy and pleased about production coming out. It's coming along swimmingly. Who knows? I sent a message today over to Rob Liefeld just a few minutes ago. Reached out and wanted to say hi to him, and thought it was cool because I was just like, you know what? I really like the current Youngblood series, and if you ever do a Bloodline, a Blood Strike series, and bring back that Bloodline team, I would really, really, really like to take a crack at it. So, but nonetheless, keep up the great work, and left it at that. That'd be funny if he responded and actually wanted me to send him a treatment. I'd find that hilarious. I'd probably choke on my own tongue. Just be like, "Gluck." It's Rob Liefeld. Yes, I'm a fan of Feld. If you guys don't like him, that's cool. I love Todd's work and the innovations he did in comics and the dynamic layouts he did in comics. But one thing that always bothered me as a pet peeve, even when he was on Spider-Man, stuff was flat. His dark inks, his heavy blacks would flatten it out a lot of times because it was so heavy. But everybody bashes on Rob for the anatomy and stuff. But the thing is, he was the innovator of the action comics, of the heavy hitting action stuff that we have now. That was a lot of his work that did that, So think about that one for a second, because even if you don't like his artwork, the dude was very creative and a master of the fight scene in comics throughout the late 80s, early 90s when he showed up on the scene. That's why he became so popular so fast, That's why those guys popped out like that. And then you had Jim. Jim Lee was the purist. He was the absolute best at what he did for line work, dramatic line work. And then people that followed him up, like Mike Turner, rest in peace, dude. But before he passed away from cancer, he was just like, he was even better than Jim by far. Now, you may not have liked his style because he had kind of a sleek, sexy, seductive type of style going on, which means it was really pretty. But the thing is about that, he was one of the best anatomical artists out there. He could draw anything. And if there was ever anybody that could draw, anything, like touch the page and go for it, it was Mike. The guy was phenomenal. I got to work with him once on a podcast, and was supposed to be at a Comic-Con that he was at, but I wasn't able to make it. Some family stuff came up, but we phoned in a few times, and the dude was just as nice as could be. Just amazing. And I've never heard anybody say anything ill of him. Whether they like his style or not, you know, you still respect the man, period. So, let's see. I'm trying not to mark this up too much. I'm going to leave those lenses open. And I'm going to call it right here. I got one more thing to do. This is what I was looking for doing. I got drawing the shadow right here. And we have it. That's Bane. That's what you're going to get from it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it for you guys hanging out with me on a Sunday evening. And I know everybody's going to see The Walking Dead. It's like, hurry up, finish. So, so I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to shade this in real quick. That's why I'm stumbling here. Thank you very much for coming on. And I'll catch you next time. Smile, wink, waggle your tongue at somebody, make them laugh, make them smile, make them feel good, and make the place a better joint than when you found it. So check you tomorrow.